In this tutorial, I'll show you how you can perform a cluster analysis in Tableau. To get started, we want to upload our data for cluster analysis. For most of the data sets in this class, it'll be a CSV file, so we want to use the text file instead of Microsoft Excel. Go ahead and click this and select your data. Allow your data to load and then go to Sheet 1. View your variables then on the left-hand side of the screen. Select either of your quantitative variables and drop one into rows and the other into columns. Now what we see is we just see 1 point. This means that Tableau is automatically aggregating our data at the beginning. So we want to look at the raw data. So go up to Analysis and deselect the aggregate measures. Now we can see a scatter plot of age versus principal income for Oregonians in 2023. Again, this is my clean random sample of data of about 300 individuals. Now it's time to do the cluster analysis. To do that, we go up to Analytics. Under Analytics, we see Clusters. Grab Clusters and drop it onto the plot. Tableau automatically creates clusters. In this case, it made 2 big clusters. Edit the number of clusters until you see a good data story. I'm going to put in 4 clusters to see how that changes things. Now I can see these 3 different groups and 1 bigger group up above. You can continue to edit the clusters to however many you want. In order to create these clusters, Tableau performs a k-means cluster analysis. It standardizes the variables rather than using the raw values, which is a really good thing in this case because we have a very different scale between age of Oregonians and their overall income. So this will give us the best type of clustering. We can also check out our model diagnostics under clusters. Here, if you use the drop-down, you can go to Describe Clusters. Here we'll be able to see our sums of squares. We want an overall small within-group sums of squares, and we can compare clustering to make sure we have the smallest within-group sums of squares. We can also compare the ratio of between sums of squares over the total sums of squares to get a measure for the amount of variability our clustering explains in our overall data. We want this to be close to 1 or 100%. So 16 over 20 is somewhere around 80% for an R-squared value. That's pretty good. Let's go ahead and do a different clustering and see how this changes. So if we go back to the 2 clusters that we did before, we can go to Edit Clusters and do what it did automatically with 2. Let's see how that changes the overall describing sums of squares. Going down here, Describe Sums of Squares, we can see that now 12 over 20 is what we would look at as an R-squared. So this only explains about 60% of the variation in our overall data. The within-group sums of squares is also larger, which tells me that our 4 clustering is better than the 2. Now, you can go through and edit the number of clusters to something that makes the most sense for you. Diagnostics are important. Also, just looking at the data and just having a data story based upon the different clusters is the most important part. Here, I'm going to just go with 4 clusters. Once you're finished, we can start to edit our overall chart. We can edit the title and edit the axes just like we did in our data visualization unit. I'm going to do that now. Once I've edited my titles, I can also increase the view if I want to entire view. This expands the overall view of my plot. And now I'm pretty much done with my clustering, except over here on the legend, I noticed that these are not very descriptive cluster names, cluster 1 through 4. To edit these, I have to do a little bit more work than just clicking and editing. So in order to edit these titles, I can go back to data, and I actually need to make my clusters a categorical variable. So I'm going to grab clusters and I'm going to drag it over into above measure names. Now I have the clusters saved over here as essentially a categorical grouping. I'm going to remove the clusters from here, and then I'm going to drag my cluster grouping back down into the groups. Adding color, now I can edit the names by choosing this drop-down menu and going to Edit Group. Here I can click on Cluster 4 and then click Rename. This will allow me to rename the first grouping Cluster 4. I'm going to do that now. I've named this group Young and Low to Moderate Income. If I want to see it pop up in my cluster names, I can click Apply. And now I can see what it looks like over here. I can do that with my other clusters as well. Once I'm finished, I click apply and I can see all the names pop up on my clustering. Pressing OK, I can now see my different views. If I can't see all the names, I can just slide this over so now I can see the different cluster analysis names. If I also want to change the legend up here, I can do that by clicking Edit, Title, and change the title of my clustering. And now I have clustering with K equal to 4. Hopefully this video helped you understand how to create a cluster analysis in Tableau.